I scaled my hybrid coaching practice from minus $20,000 to $150,000 a month in just 12 months. And in this video, I'm going to show you how. I'm just kidding. I didn't do it all in 12 months, but I want you to stay with me because I'm doing this. I have a pretty large following on Instagram, but a lot of people just see the bells and whistles of my follower count, of who I know, of who I'm following, of the views that I get. Some of my Instagram reels are hitting upwards of 3, 4, 5 million. I've been on the world's biggest podcasts. The biggest people in health, wellness, and medicine are following me. And not a lot of people really understand how I got here. So if you haven't subscribed to my YouTube channel, please do, because this is where you're going to get more long form content to understand more about me, Louisa Nicola, and more about neuroathletics, which is my consulting firm. So for those of you who don't know me, my name is Louisa Nicola. I'm a neurophysiologist and human performance coach. I'm the founder and director of Neuroathletics, where our mission is to democratize brain health education so you can perform better, think faster, and live longer. I have scaled the company from just me to 10 people, and I'm doing this while living in New York City. I live in Manhattan, but let me tell you, it was not all, it was not like this. So I'll give you a quick runaround on my past. So obviously born and raised in Australia. I was schooled there. I went to several universities, University of Newcastle, then Notre Dame University in Sydney, and then the University of Sydney. And I was also a triathlete, so I raced for Australia. I qualified for Beijing and Auckland, and that was really fun. And I consider myself a very, I was amateur, if you will, but I was professional in my own rights. I trained at least 40 hours a week. So I think when I look back on that time, I think Australia and my experience really built me to who I am today. If you are an endurance athlete, I have to tell you that you would know what it takes to be an endurance athlete. And being an endurance athlete, training 40 hours a week, turning up to training every single morning, rain, hail, or shine at 6 a.m., being the best in 3 sports. You've got swim, bike, run, plus transition. The things that triathlon taught me really paved the path for me into who I am today, which is a business owner. Yes, I understand medicine, human performance. However, at the end of the day, I am an entrepreneur. I do have a company and I'm trying to scale that company. So it's funny, like people think, oh, I'll just, start a company and but a company is like an endurance sport. You have to keep going. You have to keep getting hit. You have to keep getting up after you keep getting hit. It takes a lot of strength and willpower. It takes a lot of endurance. So everything I know today is a result of my triathlon training. So I moved to the US in 2017 and I did this on a whim. In 2016, I actually flew. I was invited to fly to the Red Bull headquarters annual conference. They do this in Malibu. And Andy Walsh was the head of high performance back then. He's not now, but he is an amazing, amazing guy. He is Australian and he was a professor that I knew. And in 2016, he actually invited me and I was working. I had no idea what the US even was. I was like, what? He said, you'll be around some of the best athletes in the world. These are Red Bull sponsored athletes. You get to come to America. You'll get to see LA and Malibu, and then you just fly home. So I thought, you know what? I'm going to fly to LA and do this. And that was the turning point for me because when I flew to LA, I had just finished school. I just finished all of my training and I was working full time. I took 10 days off to fly to this conference and I thought I'll also sightsee. When am I ever going to come to LA again? And I flew to LA and I got this glimpse at this Red Bull High Performance annual summit, whatever you want to call it. I've got photos of it. They brought wolves out. It was absolutely unbelievable. Like, they had motocross athletes there. They had the best skateboarders in the world. They had the best physicians in the world there, best in sports science and tech. We got to use these jet packs. They were just coming into, it was just unbelievable. And that was the first time that I realized that I need to be in America, because America was operating 10 years in front of the Australian market. And I knew that if I wanted to be at the top of my game, which at that time I actually didn't know what it was, I just knew that I wanted to work with professional athletes. I knew that I had to be in America after that weekend. And so what happened was, when I flew there, I had around 3,000 Instagram followers at the time. A girl from, and I'm going to name her name is Julie Jaws Nelson. She's unbelievable. She changed my life. She lived in New York City. She's a boxer and she worked at a boxing studio and in New York. And she reached out to me on Instagram and said, I love what you're doing. So back in 2015, I actually started my Instagram back in 2014, but around 2015, I started putting out content around mindset and the brain. And obviously I was studying that. So I was like, okay, I just want to talk about how you can change your brain. This is in 2015. How anybody can change their brain to get the life that they want. So she saw that. Then she also saw that I was in Malibu, and she said, would you fly to New York City and do a conference for my team, do a workshop? And the only thing I knew about New York City was Sex and the City and Friends. I didn't know anything about New York City. I was actually petrified to fly here. I was so petrified that Julie actually had to come and get me. I got into a cab at JFK and I took a cab downtown to the Lower East Side. That's where I had my hotel. I was so petrified to leave that Julie had to come and get me from the hotel and take me to her studio, which was, I believe back then, it wasn't in Williamsburg. I think it was in NoHo. So long story short, I gave a pretty compelling speech or conference, if you will, to these trainers. So they were all, by the way, one of the trainers was Jess Sims. She had like 1,500 followers back then. She's now one of the most biggest Peloton instructors. I love her, and she was there for me right at the start too. So some of the biggest names in fitness were at this little studio, and they were just trainers, and they just wanted to be better, whether it was be better boxers or be better trainers at the time. So I gave them this amazing, empowering speech, and that then led me to give another talk at Rumble Boxing, the original Rumble Boxing. And what happened was, all of the trainers at that time, there was probably around 15 of them, 15 or 20 trainers, combined in the both studios. What happened was they all put me out on Instagram. This was back when you could go viral on Instagram. This is like 2016. So they put me out on Instagram and I went viral, and I ended up, and then from that, and also some of the guys at the Red Bull Summit, like I'm talking some of the guys who had 1 million followers back then. I remember the number one fencer in the world put me on Instagram. Number one motocross driver put me on Instagram. So all these people in like the matter of 5 days put me on their Instagram story, and I blew up. I went from 3,000 followers to having around 40,000 followers. And that ended up leading to, so I was in America. I was meant to go home. It was only meant to be 10 days. I was in New York City. I had no idea what I was doing, where I was. I was staying at Hotel Indigo. Mr. Purple is on top. It's down in the Lower East Side on Ludlow Street. And I ended up getting inundated with messages from NBA players, NFL players. My name started to spread around the community, especially the fitness community. People were like, who is this girl? I had an Australian accent, so obviously people were like, who is she? And so people were reaching out to me. I'm talking like some of the biggest NBA players were reaching out to me. Can you do a consult with me? I was actually $20,000 in debt at this time. So I want everyone to know I had no money. I literally was surviving on a credit card, and people were coming to Hotel Indigo and they were paying me. And so I didn't know how to charge anyone. So I was like, sure. Someone just told me that they will give me $300 in cash for my time. So that's what I started benchmarking myself on. So I ended up making more money in a week, that week in New York City, than what I did in probably the last 2 or 3 months. So I ended up extending my time in New York by another week. So that would bring me to 3 weeks. And I kept ringing my work up saying I can't come home. I was ringing my parents. I'm like, I'm not coming home. So I basically lived at Hotel Indigo. And I thought to myself, wow, I'm never going to come back to New York. So let's see how many people I can meet while I'm here. So I had a mission. I thought I think I've said this before somewhere. I said, I have a mission for every single person in New York City to know who I am. So I went around to about 50 gyms and introduced myself. Handshake. I literally looked up gyms in New York City and I walked in and I just handshook everybody. They thought it was the weirdest thing. But let me tell you, I got them all to follow me on Instagram. And then they knew who I was. I was dubbed the Diamond Boss back then, but I was dubbed as the Australian Girl. So everyone in the fitness industry knew who I was. And so my Instagram following was growing. I was making money because people just kept wanting to see me. I was getting results. I was like changing people's lives. I was helping these athletes know more about their brain, about their body, about neurology, about blood work. I was just doing all of this. And I was like, okay, this is amazing. People kept asking who I was. So I kept extending my trip, and it ended up being about, 6 weeks here. And that's when I realized I want to come to America and start my company. So I went home, and I went home for a few months. And then in 2017, I made the move. I was still in debt. I was still growing my podcast. I was still growing my Instagram following. And I packed up my apartment back in Australia and I flew to America, and I was on a 90-day visa. So I had 90 days to figure out how do I stay here permanently, or how do I stay here for an extended time and get a proper work visa. So I came here, I figured that out. I won't bore you with the fundamentals of how I did that, but it was daunting and grueling and emotionally scarring, if you will. If any Australians have come here as an immigrant, I applaud you, because it's really scary. So I moved here officially in 2017, and I worked for several companies. I built my following. That's all I came here for. I dug so deep to build my following, to practice what I was doing. I was getting clients. I was training NFL players, NBA players. I did a speech one day, that was at the end of 2017, which got the attention of a corporate executive. He was a hedge fund manager. Back then, I had no idea what that was, but I just thought to myself, if you are performing at a high level, I don't care if you're an actual athlete, but if you're performing at a high level, that means you should be performing like an athlete. So I brought him on board, an executive, at the end of 2017, and I worked so well with him over a 6-month period. He got so much from me in terms of results, revenue. He increased his revenue. He was taking care of, I think he had about, let's just say 50 million under asset management. He had people working for him. He had a wife, he had kids. He was so stressed. I got him to his peak back at the end of 2017. He liked me so much. He ended up hiring me for everybody on his floor. And that was around 30 people. So it was also at the end of 2017 that I walked myself to Gary Vee's office in Hudson Yards. It was a really hot day, so I think maybe it was around August. I walked myself there and I met Gary Vee. He took me to his office. I've got heaps of photos of it on my Instagram if you just scroll through. And he told me to start a podcast. So I did. And the podcast was probably the best thing that I ever did. I started it and I was ahead of the game. I was one of the first people to interview Andrew Huberman, who now has the top podcast in the world for health and fitness. I'm sure everybody knows him. I had him on my podcast. I've had the manager of the Spurs on my podcast. I've had elite athletes. We're up to about now episode 300 and maybe 50, I think. But the podcast was there for me to spread my message, which was to democratize brain health education and human performance education. Little did I know what it did for me. It built my reputation. It built my brand. It built my network. it built my following on Instagram, and it built my business. So I started to craft out my package, my course package, which is what we do now. We still work, at Neuroathletics, we still have a private consulting arm. So we still work with elite athletes. We still work with corporate executives, and they are paying us, or the company, upwards of $50,000. And we do a lot of things from blood work. We do biometric testing. We do VO2 max testing. I have an exercise physiologist on board who does all of the testing from lactate. He's doing strength, obviously. He's doing type 1, type 2 muscle fiber tests. Like, we're going really deep on the weeds of that because these types of clients really want it. These people who are willing to pay for their health really want it. We're doing extensive blood work. We're getting around 7,000 different data points on an individual. We carve out a program and we work with them for about 6 to 8 months. And it is phenomenal to see how I've gone from minus $20,000 to having a team to living in New York City. Like, it makes me really emotional. If you are, I don't think anybody, if you're born and raised in New York, or even if you're born and raised in America, I don't think you can understand the amount of work that it takes as an immigrant to come here. It makes you unbreakable. And one day I just cannot wait to tell my kids this story because it inspires me. So fast forward to 2019, I had a group of physical therapists in New York City reach out to me saying, how are you working with these athletes? Why are so many people talking about you on Instagram? Like, by then I was growing my Instagram. Like, I don't know how many I had by then, but like, so many people were finding out about me. And so these group of trainers, physical therapists, I should say, asked me to come in for a 2-day workshop and just teach them everything I know about how I train high net worth individuals. So I did. And I basically called it a neuroathletics consulting weekend. And I went through 6 core modules, which are now part of the neuroathletics coaching certificate. So I turned that weekend into an actual certified certificate for coaches. We have now certified over 550 coaches. It still gives me chills. So I now teach my methods of how I work with high net worth individuals on a hybrid basis, which is both in person and online, how I'm not trading my time for cash, how I'm building wealth as a coach, and I'm teaching others how to do that. So we've now done 550 individuals, and it's just been absolutely unbelievable. I've skipped over a few steps because it's like, I've done so much in between. I've traveled. I'm one of the highest paid speakers as well on a speaking circuit. I mean, in terms of health and fitness, I get paid to speak at conferences. I'm on a flight every single month, and I teach everyone how to do this. And if I had to nail it down to one thing that I want you guys to learn, because if you are a coach, I'm talking health coach, nutrition coach, strength and conditioning coach, I want you to know this one thing. If you are after changing and bending the morbidity curve, which is if you're after really making a change in your client's life, it comes down to confidence. And confidence is just certainty on steroids, meaning if you are not confident as a coach, you will not be able to market yourself as a coach, be different to every other coach in the industry, and you'll not be able to make the money that you can make, and you won't be able to make the impact that you can make on somebody's life. And the reason why I say confidence is because I see so many coaches coming into the NAC course, Neuroathletics Coaching Certificate course. I see them coming to us without confidence saying, I'm certified in nutrition, but I just don't know how to talk about longevity. I don't know anything about brain health. I don't know anything about VO2 max testing. I don't know how to extend someone's lifespan or health span. And that then makes them not be able to go on to Instagram and market themselves as a coach. So This entire like certificate is not just about education, because I have to say you'll increase your confidence as a coach through education and experience. And that's what the neuroathletics community does, because when you actually come and do the course, you also get into a community of alumni and just a thriving community of coaches all over the world who are after the same thing as you. Once you build that out, once you build out the systems, once you build out the education, once you know the 6 core pillars of human performance, once you really know how to bring a client on and work in a hybrid fashion so you can probably triple what you're currently earning, that's how you're going to make a difference. But you won't make a difference. You won't be able to build a company. You won't be able to build anything if you don't have the confidence. And that actually brings me to my next point. I hate that the coaching industry has a bad rep, because coaches, health coaches, whatever you want to call yourself, have a real big responsibility in this world, and that is to move the needle forward when it comes to health and performance. Most people are not seeing their doctors nearly enough. They really go to their coaches for their health information. And if you as a coach don't have the necessary information, you're not going to get a client on board for the rest of your life. What you want is to be the last coach that a client ever has to see. How many times do people just keep changing their coaches up? They're like, oh, I've been training with him for 6 weeks, maybe for 2 months, and I'm done with him because he doesn't really know what he's doing, and I've reached my end with him. In order for you to be the last person that a client sees, you have to keep leveling up. You have to keep understanding more and more. Science and medicine is ever evolving. I mean, I would know. I'm currently at the forefront of science when it comes to neuroscience and Alzheimer's disease, and I'm publishing and I'm reviewing and I'm learning, and I know that science changes. So you have to be at the forefront of that, and you have to equip yourself with the skills and knowledge that it takes to get your client from average to elite. Right? Everyone wants to be elite. It's no longer healthy. It's no longer about absence of disease. You need more than that. Every single person wants to feel like they're thriving. They want to wake up feeling energized, high libido, happy, in control. You can't get that if you're not healthy. You can't get healthy if you don't have the right person steering you that way. So if you are interested in leveling up and you want to know more, you can join the 550 others who are doing this course. Our next intake is March 25th. So we are recording this on the 23rd of February, 2024. So the next intake is literally in 4 weeks. And we don't take everybody on board. We do take people who are experienced coaches. You've got to be having at least, you've got to have some clients on board already, because we help you carve out a program, and we do this for life. You get put into the program and you're there for life, really. We do weekly coaching calls with our alumni. So even after the 6 weeks, after you've done the online program, you then go into the alumni program where you're seeing me each week. So that was just a quick glimpse into my past. And I'll keep doing videos like this. If you do like these videos, comment below. Please subscribe to this channel. And if you are interested, I'll put all the information below. I'll put the Calendly link if you want to book a call with one of our advisors. I'll put the website specifically for the modules, and to learn more, go and look at the client results. We've got a lot of trainers who have done testimonials for us. But other than that, I hope you have an awesome weekend, and I'll see you in the next video.